oh, Curtis said all these things, and then Dame's response was, well, there is money in streaming. That's definitely not all I said in that podcast. He's closed his door to streaming. He's taking his music off. That's fine.
Well, not really, right? What's going down? Welcome back to the EPND podcast. I think we've finally chosen a name, and there's a mean comment I want to read to the two of you about our name selection process. So we appreciate you tuning in. Once again, we are brought to you by Two Lost. If you want 3 months of free music distribution to a comprehensive and wide range of stores, more so than a lot of other distributors, then go to twolost.com, use the promo code PAIN. You'll get 3 months free. And then after that, I think it's $2.99, not $299. So it's a incredibly affordable distributor. And on the topic of distribution, right, we've dedicated the last episode to streaming, which a distributor feeds into, not necessarily, but certainly nowadays do. We have a lot to decompress from, I think.
Well, before that, let me just promote the contest we just launched too. So we just launched a contest, Two Lost and T-Pain, collab for the crown. This is a contest where artists have the opportunity to potentially win up to $20,000. So essentially, Two Lost is committed to $100,000 over the course of 3 contests, right? So the prize pool for each contest is $33,000, $20,000 to first, $8,000 to second, $5,000 to third. And basically what you have to do is what you already should be doing, right? You got to make an original song, collaborate with another artist to make an original song. This song T-Pain has requested should have an automotive or a racing theme. Then go to twolost.com/collab for the crown. And you can get all the rest of the details there. But ultimately, that's all you have to do is make music, work with somebody else, promote yourself, and then you have the opportunity to win up to $20,000. So check it out. Go to twolost.com/collab for the crown. The video is also on the Two Lost and T-Pain's page. So I think all artists should be participating in stuff like this. I know that some artists feel like they're too big or too cool, but it's an opportunity to win some cash. But I think, obviously only three artists are going to win cash, but everybody can pick up some new fans through this. So definitely check it out. Collab for the Crown, something that we started with the MEC. We did a collab for the Crown a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, just bringing that concept of Two Lost and try to amplify it and make it bigger this time around. So check it out.
Dane, question. Can an artist upload more than one collab? Like, what is that a possibility, or do they just get one entry?
No, you just get one entry. You can't just start uploading a bunch of songs. Just kind of keep it fair. One entry. So collaborate with one person. Neither one of you can submit another entry.
Oh, okay.
You can collaborate with more than one person. It could be a self-destruction or we all in the same gang type joint. I know I just went old school with folks. People don't even know what those even are, but you can have as many people as you want to on the track. You just have to collaborate with another artist. So yeah, we had a debate with Curtis King about streaming. He took his music off of streaming and he's been going in on streaming, to promote his album. And I would say a few days, once the episode came out this week, I regretted having the conversation, right? I asked him from the jump, I said, hey, is this just marketing for your album? And he basically admitted that the answer was yes. So ultimately what he was doing is, like, sometimes artists or people that are selling something, they need to create an enemy, right? So he created the enemy in streaming and he went all in on attacking that enemy. I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with that if he also wasn't an educator, right? Like, if he's known in the space as kind of educating artists, educating producers. So I felt like he went overboard and kind of started misleading people or giving, not factual information in order to push his album. And I just felt like that was out of pocket. And then he painted people that do lean into streaming as kind of like these algorithm obsessed, like non-artist type of people. That was another problem that I had, because like the artists that are doing well in streaming aren't just sitting here like nerdy, like, oh, the algorithm this. Like, nah, they're artists. Like, they're making music. They love their art just as much as Curtis loves his art. They're regular artists that are passionate about what they do. Sure, there might be some people that are more into like maybe gaming the system and things like that, but that's not the majority of what I see. These people really care about their craft. And I think the picture he painted of people that lean into streaming is just not what I'm seeing. So I was upset that I continued to engage in this conversation, knowing that he was just doing it for the marketing. But I feel my job as an educator is to like educate people on the entire space, the entire board, right? And once you understand the landscape that you're playing in, it's your job to figure out how you want to set up your pieces or decide not to play at all, right? So I felt like what Curtis was doing was kind of misleading and miseducating people about streaming. I'm trying not to be like the cape for streaming. I've said many times there's issues that I have with streaming, but there's a lot of people winning from streaming because they've learned how to set up their pieces to take advantage of the money and the opportunity that it can bring. Not just the money, but the exposure. And then when I saw yesterday that, in fact, his project is going to be on streaming, I'm like, yo, it's not going to be on Deezer. He says it's not going to be on Deezer. It's not going to be on Spotify. But it's like, streaming is streaming. It's not like these other platforms are paying hella bread. I don't know why you would have such a problem with Spotify, other than the fact it's the biggest one, and like not have an issue with Tidal or YouTube or any of these other platforms. So now, to me, you're entering like borderline scammer territory, because now you want people to invest in your project and they're going to get a percentage of royalties from streaming, but you've been going so hard against streaming for the past few weeks. And final point, like, and if it's about the art, I haven't heard one song. Like, I mean, he's probably promoting the music as well, but like all I've been hearing about is streaming sucks, streaming this, streaming that. If it's about the music, where's the music? Like, put the art first. I just, Hobson was a person that needed to create a victim. Ruthless was a victim. I mean, he created an enemy. I'm sorry. He was the victim. He needed to be the victim, right? First, Ruthless was the enemy, and then the industry became the enemy. Then people wanting his money became the enemy. And then I became the enemy. Like, I understand people that need to do that from a marketing standpoint. Sometimes it's cool, whatever. But like, if it's about the art, let's let the art talk. So yeah, I just was a little frustrated after kind of seeing some of the comments, and then people in the comments, they're just, I was going to like call out a few, but I'm good on that. Like the comments were just ridiculous, but Curtis sold a decent amount. I think he sold like, he got like 1,500 the first day and went up to like 2,000 the second day. But I promise you, Curtis, if you're listening to this, I promise you didn't have to do none of that. I could have worked with you and you could have sold the same amount. You've been in this game long enough. You have some of the emails, the phone numbers. Like, you didn't have to go on this streaming, enemy campaign to sell what you sold. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything to say, but that's just kind of how I feel about the conversation now.
I'm not a Curtis King apologist and not going to defend him, but I do want to be true to what he said. He did say that it was marketing in part, but he also does genuinely oppose the streaming structure, which I feel like if that's where he's at, that's valid. We can't invalidate it by saying, like it's just for marketing. And then also I think that, his thought process with Spotify, which he's been very clear on, is that he feels like the threshold is an issue and like feeds into a bigger issue, which is why I'm assuming that he is still going with other streaming services, but not going with Spotify. And then I'm assuming maybe Deezer doesn't have a favorable split either. So that's why he went that way. I do agree with you though, however, where it's like, the assumption was that he wasn't going to stream at all, but it really is now apparently just an even campaign where he's still going to put it on even to get the sales and then distribute after. So, yeah, I think the conversation was interesting. I think the hard part that I had about it was that it felt like the goalpost consistently was moving. And then, like you said, we would always end up like, of course, like we agree, like you should have your own website. You should be trying to funnel and aggregate your fans into a cohesive community. So like, if artists get anything from the takeaway, whether you agree or disagree with Dame or Curtis, it's like build a community, find what works for you in the industry. As Dame said, he's not caping for the streaming services, but he's a little bit on one side and Curtis is a little bit on another side. And I think I'm squarely in the middle that streaming can't be your end all be all. And I don't know anybody who it's their end all be all. Again, I represent a lot of Black creatives. And for us, I'm not saying that streaming is impossible, but the way the world works is we got to get multiple pieces of different pies to make our meal work. So I think it was a cool conversation if you come from a pragmatic disposition and you're like, let me pick apart this conversation and listen to the different sides of the industry. And yeah, I think that Curtis took the role of artist in this instead of educator. And I think that that's fine. I think that we all have different roles to play. But I think if you're looking at this as an educational conversation, you have to filter it through the proper lenses and be like, yes, I have learned from Curtis King, but I do believe in this situation, he prioritized being an artist, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, and creating, an arc for his marketing. And so it's the big bad streaming service versus Curtis King, where I really think it's like, it was positioned as like art versus commerce, but I don't feel like that was a fair assessment because that's not the conversation that we had. And then there were certain parts of it, but I don't know, it was an interesting conversation. I'll leave it at that. I have a lot of respect for Curtis King. It just was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely still respect the cat. I just, again, my biggest thing is that as an educator, I feel like, we have to educate and we have to kind of tell all sides of things, right? And I don't even feel like I'm on one side and he's on the other. Like, I didn't even look at it like that. Like, I just want people to know that, yes, there are people winning from streaming. It's not like, don't just get discouraged and be like, nah, I can't do this. Like there are people that are being consistent and the music is leading and the music is winning, not because there's some nerd figuring out an algorithm, because their music is genuinely good and it's connecting with people like that. It's happening all the time. It's still, I'm gonna sound like a broken clock, but it's still very tough to make it in music. But don't close the door to streaming because it offers a lot of positive things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. The thing that makes me uncomfortable is going beyond the recap and kind of, I feel like we could have had Curtis on to talk about these other points that we're addressing now. So I don't personally want to speak on any subsequent criticism of Curtis since he was already on, and it just wouldn't feel right to me. There was an amazing comment. So everyone got toasted in the comments, mostly Curtis and Dame, since they were the title bout. But did you read this comment? This one's amazing. This is from B. Stiley. So the new normal is 3 intelligent people, referring to us. So we are air quotes intelligent, not actually intelligent, struggling to come up with a simple name for a podcast, clickbait thumbnails that have more selling power than the actual content. See, I can't even read, so I'm definitely not intelligent. I'm air quotes intelligent. The thumbnail that he's referring to was like a picture of Curtis King boxing with Spotify. So yeah, that was terribly deceptive. It had nothing to do with Curtis or Spotify when you actually got into the content. And then garbage content that promotes stupidity, violence, guns, drugs, and pure laziness. I would say we promote all of those things, and so does Curtis. I mean, he brought liquor, narcotics, and firearms onto the episode. I had to crop them out. And then, clearly we're promoting the same, and we're stupid. 4 children in the background bickering over the slave master's cruel tactics. That's us plus Curtis. So we are the slaves and children at that. So-called educators that are thick as 2 short planks. I do my squats, so thank you. And then whole nations of peoples glued to electrical devices from baby's age upward that does not serve them well, health, or spiritually wise. So I think that pretty much sums it up. If I had to recap the last 2 episodes, I would just read that comment and stand on that. What do you guys think?
I mean, don't downplay the importance of a name. Like, I think a name is important. Like, so you should take some
If you're
time.
intelligent, a name for your stupid little podcast with garbage content is important. Yeah.
You should take your time and figure out exactly, what your name should be as an artist, what your name should be as a business, because a name, like, is when people hear that, you want to have an idea of like, what it represents. You want to feel comfortable and confident representing that name. So I take a lot of pride in the things that I've been involved in the names. Like, I loved Funk Volume. Funk Volume was an amazing name to me. Too Lost is a great name to me. Collab for the Crown is a great name to me. I mean, Music Entrepreneur Club is basic, but it tells you exactly what we were doing. So if you are downplaying like the importance of a name, and I don't know if he's necessarily doing that, I think he's just clowning us. Like, we're 3 people here. We have 3 different opinions, 3 different vibes, 3 different brands. Like, so it would make sense to take some time and figure out exactly, what the name should be. So I encourage other independent creators to really take some time and figure out, what your name says and about you. So I have that does not a diss to me. I don't mind taking time with a name.
I mean, and you wrote us a paragraph. That sounds like fan mail to me. So thank you.
Yeah. There was another one. I don't want to go too much into the comments because it's just going to take us on a different trajectory. But there were a lot of criticisms posted. The main one was Dame works for the streaming services, which I love how tenacious stupidity is. Because you can say, no, Dame doesn't work for the streaming companies, and say, yes, he does. And then you can say, okay, well, he doesn't, but cool. No, he does. It's like, all right, man. If you tell me that I have an extra finger and I hold my hand up and be like, no, I don't. And they say, yeah, you do. I can't argue with you. The other great criticism against Curtis, a lot of the criticism directed at Curtis was just vague. It was just Curtis is out of touch. Curtis is this. Curtis is a snake oil. So like this and that. I'm just like, what are you talking about?
But he's gonna get a lot of support because there's a lot of frustration and there's a lot of people that haven't figured this shit out, and that's just gonna be the case. So I understand that frustration. I sympathize with it. I do not work for a streaming. I work for a distribution company that ultimately gets your music on streaming platforms. But since 2008, I've been working with independent creators. Like, my money has been made when artists make money. So like, I'm with y'all. Like, I'm trying to educate artists on how to set up their businesses to win. Like, I've always been on the side of artists, it doesn't mean you're going to like everything I have to say, right? Everything is not, I can't, if I was on the side of the artist and just saying what you want to hear, I would be misleading you, right? And probably taking your money and scamming you. But you have to understand the other side to these things, because in the long run, it's better for you and your business.
That's also why I like the At Odds podcast, because I feel like the artists don't get it sometimes. So they're at odds with the information that we're sharing. But yeah, I think the comments were really fascinating. I want to specifically say thank you, because I don't get into the comments often. I read them sometimes, but I really don't look at the comments until Payne is like, oh, there's a lot of crazy comments, or, oh, this video is doing really, really well. But consistently, people show me love. And I'm not trying to make this like a me train, but I have to be grateful because y'all are really kind and beautiful. And a lot of people show me love. And then there's a couple of people who are haters, but like, I'm grateful for all of y'all because y'all are giving our videos attention. And sometimes y'all have valid criticism and sometimes y'all are idiots, but that's okay. Like, thank you so much for watching. I think the issues, like, I don't have any issues with the comments because if you're arguing and saying a lot of crazy stuff, you're in the right place. It's like hospitals are for sick people. So if you're ignorant to the music industry, this is a great place for you to come and learn. Just don't stay ignorant. Okay. Like, learn.
The last thing that there was a comment. I'm not going to single this person out, but I would just encourage people to listen to the entire podcast and try to relax your biases before you like listen, right? I think there was somebody that said, oh, Curtis said all these things, and then Dame's response was, well, there is money in streaming. That's definitely not all I said in that podcast. Like, if that's all you heard from our back and forth, you either just weren't listening or only listened to part of the podcast, or you refused to hear the other things that I was saying, right? So, the comments are interesting. I did comment on a few using my YouTube profile. I may or may not continue to do that, but you can't fight all the ignorance. You gotta just let some of that ride.
And now I get to say, damn, why are you giving them all this energy like you do with me every time I reply to an occasional comment? But no, I don't personally have any regrets about that episode. I thought it was good to see opposing viewpoints on something that's contentious, especially by people who are actually actively involved in both the administrative and creative at the same time, but who have some disagreements. And the way I look at what Curtis is doing is it's a content strategy. He was honest about it being a content strategy. I think we encourage content strategies. We don't always necessarily love the content that people create or the strategies that they map out for themselves. I'm not saying that's how I feel about Curtis and his current content strategy. I think Dame has some harsh criticisms of it, but it's a content strategy. And what blows my mind about the conversation is that Dame can say what he's saying, Curtis can say what he's saying, and somebody who is in the same position, two people who are in the same position, starting out or frustrated or inexperienced, can come up with two vastly opposing viewpoints. I got 0 streams. You got 0 streams. You think Dame is an industry plant who's just trying to exploit artists. I think Curtis King is a liar, blah, blah. And it's like, well, ultimately, no matter where you go, you're going to have to do an incredible amount of work. You're going to have to strategize an incredible amount. You're going to have to do some heavy lifting. And someone might say, oh, man, Curtis is just bitter because he's not getting 30 million streams. Getting 30 million streams is hard. You're not getting 30 million streams. Someone else would be like, well, Dame just, he doesn't make art. He hates artists. Okay, well, you've never run a label. You've never run shit. So it's just interesting and kind of cool to observe, actually, just because you're looking at human behavior, you're looking at some epistemological phenomena just kind of take form in front of your very eyes.
But I think my biggest problem with it is like, it's not two opposing viewpoints. And this is going to sound egotistical, like I'm right and he's wrong, but like, I'm not telling artists what to do. I'm simply revealing the facts about what can be. Like, he's closed his door to streaming. He's taking his music off. That's fine.
Not really, right? And I'm not saying you have opposing viewpoints. I'm saying people in the comments do.
I just don't want artists to learn or to take away from what he's doing that streaming is a lost cause. I'm simply saying, hey, however you set up your pieces is however you decide to win. Because even LaRussell, right? LaRussell, he does streaming, but he's leaned more heavily into direct to fans, right? That's how he does it. It's working for him, right? He uses the Even platform, sells a bunch of merch, but he also does streaming, right? He put his thing up, I think it was like 17 million streams or something like that, right? So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying what Curtis is doing is wrong for him. I'm saying what he's doing is giving artists misinformation about streaming. Because if you listen to him, you would think that like, oh, that's a lost cause. Like, what am I doing? So it's not two opposing viewpoints. It's me opening the door back up to a door that he's communicating is pretty much shut.
Well, I think that anyone who thinks it's two opposing viewpoints is just either listening with one AirPod on during a work meeting, or they're just not ready for that level of conversation. To speak to what you're saying, Dave, I feel like I get that same criticism where, you know, I talk about mostly online beat selling strategy, marketing, SEO, that kind of thing. And people will give me criticism, like, oh, you focus on this, you're devaluing the art with all these $24.99 leases. You really need to teach people how to get on and work with these majors and get big money, or you need to teach people how to become fully independent and make lo-fi albums. And it's like, look, I don't do any of that. I would never tell you not to do those things. But the fact is, I'm sharing my experience, and that's really all I can do. When I got my first placement, the videos I was making surrounded placements. You know, now that I'm mostly leaning in, as you would say, Dame, to the online beat marketplace space, that's what the majority of my content is going to focus on, because that's what I'm living. If so, you know, like when I got the La Pat record, that was a major placement, and I made a whole video about the logistics of clearing an interpolation from Timberland. Shout out to Timberland for doing that, and shout out to 300 Entertainment for dropping the record, and for everyone supporting it because it was a hit. But I can just speak on what I'm doing at the time, and you know that. I feel that same level of criticism where people are telling me, well, why are you only talking about, you know, people even say, man, Payne, you always just talk about the business of music. You never talk about the music itself. You're devaluing the art. It's all about money. Like, bitch, I drop 2 beats every single motherfucking day. The fuck are you talking about? I make music every day. So, you know, people can take a snapshot of what you're doing right now. Like, if someone took a Polaroid of me walking down the street, they'd be like, damn, Payne doesn't have a car. If someone took a Polaroid of me behind a wheel, damn, Payne doesn't care about the environment. He drives everywhere. Someone else takes the same Polaroid of the back of my vehicle, damn, Payne drives an electric car. Payne is a fucking hippie. All of the above is true, but out of context, it paints a very different picture. So having had content strategies that get criticism where people say I'm leaning too much into one thing softens my perspective of other people doing it.
I think to disagreeing with somebody doesn't make them wrong. And I think that that's like a lot of the nuance that the comments are missing. It's almost like this podcast, we rarely agree holistically. You know, it's like, I think that's what makes us Erinn, Payne, and Dame. We're just like 3 different people with 3 different experiences, really 3 different roles in the music industry. And that informs our decision making. You know, Dame is in California, Payne is in Wisconsin. I'm in the Southeast between Atlanta and Nashville, but I travel a ton. So it's like
we know, Erinn.
Yeah, it's like y'all see my background changes almost every episode. It is what it is. But I think that that's something that I would like to highlight, that just because there's an opposing or a differing opinion, let me not even say opposing, because that's what Dame is trying to point out, that just because we think differently and we have different opinions, it doesn't make anybody more wrong or right. So that's what this should be. This should be an aggregation of wisdom and understanding. So even in the comments, it's like, that's why I don't care if people say like disagree with us or say wild stuff. It's like, y'all are still a part of our community. We're building a community here, and we don't want a monolith. We don't want everybody thinking the same thing. We don't want everybody functioning the same way, because that's what creates the richness in the community. And I think that's something that I will highlight that Curtis is doing well. Curtis has the privilege of saying, I'm going to remove my stuff from streaming or from some of the streaming, because he's built a community of people who will support him on other platforms. And he's also, to my point, using music as a loss leader. He uses music and the conversation around the music to build a brand that he now functions and makes money from. So yeah, he makes money from beats. He makes money from being an artist who has songs. He makes money from YouTubing, from brand partnerships, promotion, all these different things. And so I think if you take Dame's point, you take my point, you take Payne's point, you take Curtis's point, there's a ton to learn here. You could sit and disagree, but it's like there's nothing to disagree on. It's, we're doing what we do. We're all functioning and successful people in the music industry, and you can choose to take parts of what we do and add it to your sauce, or you can choose to reject it all. That's fine, but it doesn't make any of us wrong. So I'm grateful for the community. I'm grateful for the conversation, and, I'm grateful for the haters as well.